Welcome to Heart of Alaska. Today we'll be going over how to make fireweed jelly. So fireweed is one of the many resources that you find on interior Alaska. It's a small flower that tends to bloom the most in areas where there's previously been a fire, thus the name fireweed. These blossoms are amazingly fragrant and they work well for jellies and syrups and all sorts of other uses as well. Now, to pick these flowers for the jelly that we're going to be doing today, what we want to do is pick just the blossom. If you pick the stems, you're just going to have to clean them out later anyway. The advantage to doing this and doing it in this manner is that you're not picking the buds that are going to bloom later in the season. You see, fireweed, it blooms from the bottom to the top as the season goes on. So the people in the interior know when the season's going to change to fall by when the fireweed blooms out on the top. When you go to pick this, you want to make sure where you're reaching so that you don't have any little friends buzzing around. You see, bees are very fond of the fireweed as well, and you don't really want to get stung. So to pick them, you just take the blossom itself and just avoid the stem, and then you're just left with this little flower. For the recipe we're going to be going over today, you're going to need 8 cups minimum of the compacted flowers. Now you have to pick these early enough in the season. As you can see, this shows later in the season when they're all bloomed out, and unfortunately there's not a whole lot of blossoms to pick from. Upon returning to the house, I put together a colander to wash out my flowers, some lemon juice, pectin, and sugar. Luckily, that's about all that you need for the fireweed jelly. The first thing that I did was I rinsed out my flowers. Just make sure that they get cleaned off and dried out a little bit. Then you put them into a pot with some water, and then you simmer them. And you simmer them for 7 to 9 minutes. Now you simmer them in only a couple of cups of water. I think it was actually 4 cups of water that we used for that. And you put the lemon juice in at the same time because that helps to add a little acidity to the water, and it makes the color more pure at the end. Now, fireweed doesn't naturally have any pectin of its own, which is why the pectin portion is so important. In this particular instance, I didn't have any of the regular pectin on hand, so I had to get the low sugar. The stores here do run out of these supplies this time of year. While you're boiling the fireweed out just to get down to the fireweed juice, at that same time you want to make sure that you start the sanitation process on your jars. It gives you enough time to get them boiled and get them sanitized in advance. Now when you're looking at jars, you can just use regular mason jars. It doesn't have to be anything special. A lot of people use the decorated jars just for presentation purposes, and also they sell them at the farmer's market up here. So it makes a nice, beautiful finished product when you put them in the specialized jars, but you don't need that at all. Now the flat lids that go with those, you want to make sure that you get fresh ones each time. You can reuse jars, but not the flat portion of the lids, because once that seal is gone, it's no longer able to be sealed properly. Once your boiling is done, then you strain out the flowers, and then you use the juice to combine with the pectin and the sugar to make the finished product. Now when it starts to thicken some in the pan, you know it's ready to put into your jelly jars. You want to go ahead and jar it while it's still hot so that that seal has an opportunity to properly form on the top of the jar. The good news about this fireweed jelly is that it can last for quite some time in the fridge, or it is also shelf stable. So you can keep it on hand for a long time so you have fresh jelly over the winter. Now mine came out a little bit darker than I prefer, a little bit darker than what you see in the farmer's market. But according to my taste testers and my food critics here on hand, it did turn out pretty good. Now you have to add quite a bit of sugar to this, 7 to 8 cups altogether. I hope you have enjoyed your journey through Fireweed Jelly.